Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Director, everybody else on the stage, chairpersons, deans, faculty members, families, and of course all the students. I'm sweating a lot today, right? I never did that when I was in class. I was kind of, very relaxed. So what I'm going to do is, as always, a cheat sheet is always very useful to me. So I keep that. And in keeping with this air of a sort of a very reasonably somber occasion, I thought I need to get my pair of glasses as well. So at least give you that sense of some seriousness, some perspective, because I'm going to talk a lot about perspective. So thank you very much, and welcome to all of you here. It's absolutely wonderful to be here. It's great to be here, actually. It's a privilege, it's a pleasure, it's an honor to be here, because I never imagined 27 years ago that when I was here, in pretty much the same situation as most of you here are, that I would be one day standing here and speaking to all of you and sharing my thoughts. Because when I first came in, I was partly overwhelmed, partly cocky, and was trying very hard to forget how on earth I made it here. And acted like it seemed like it was the most natural thing to have happened. It wasn't. I was as shocked as anybody else. So, as I stand here, I want to welcome you. I don't want to scare you. And what I'm going to talk about is essentially lay out some broad thoughts of mine that I hope will challenge you, that will make your 2 years here be used productively and very gainfully, right? And because you are the 1% of the 1% of India, or maybe 1% of 1% of 1% of India. So you are already very privileged. So what do you do with that privilege is, I think, the larger question. And the whole purpose of this is not to make you again start sweating, like I unfortunately am now, worrying about grades and marks. Because I think there's a larger purpose for which you're here. And I'd like to focus on that. So while you're here on campus, you will learn all kinds of wonderful tools, techniques, frameworks, models that will help you analyze economies, businesses, industries, help you figure out efficiency calculations, productivity, costs, strategies, competitive advantages, all the other nice cool stuff. You'll also learn how to submit a report at the 11th hour, right? And that's the most important hour of the day. You'll also figure out how to not study the most but yet get the most marks. You'll also figure out how to negotiate with the professors for that half grade that will help you jump to the next GPA, right? You learn all of these wonderful things. And all with the spirit of Bangalore in and around you. So I'm not going to be able to speak on any of those things, because you have far more eminent and capable people who will talk to you about that. But what I will talk to you about is, I believe, something that's very more meaningful and in line with what the director also talked of, namely not the analysis or the analytical process, but synthesis, which is putting everything all together in context and having perspective. Because without that, everything else is meaningless. Because life is not about a spreadsheet. It's about developing that sense of perspective, okay? So I'm going to talk very briefly about a few things that have mattered to me and which I have learned from, and I hope to be able to share with you, in the hope that it has some impact on the way you think and go about your 2 years here. So people is the most important thing that you need to be able to understand, and it all starts with you. So the most important people you need to know is yourself. What are your strengths? What are your motivations? What are your aspirations? What are your fears? What are your insecurities? And why on earth are you here? Certainly, a job can't be the end goal of all of this effort. So what is it? People are complex organisms, like organizations. And you have to be able to learn to understand that, appreciate it at a very visceral level. And typically, when you get out into the corporate world, and in most of the classes that you would hear, people will talk about people are our greatest asset. Is a very well regarded and oft-spoken cliche, right, in the corporate world. Venture capitalists, when you invest in a company, will say, we look for the team. Teams are important, people are important, but teamwork is even more important. All of you are competitive. How do you become collaborative? You need to understand that. Very many years ago, I had occasion to listen to a gentleman by the name of Sam Pitroda, who was the creator of India's telecom revolution. He said a very wonderful thing. He said, one Indian is equal to 10 Japanese. 10 Indians are equal to one Japanese. Right? A very profound statement. And when you look around you today, the question you have to ask is, how do I collaborate while being competitive? Is it all about me? Is it all about us? Is it about what I'm trying to achieve? So while you're here, take some time to understand who you are and what kinds of games you can play that will further, and when I say games you can play, I don't mean it in a derogatory manner, but something that you would use and play that will help further the agenda for your own personal success. For myself, I very quickly realized that I'm pretty lousy at operations. I get bored very easily. I get bored with monotony. I cannot do the same thing on and on and on. I need something to keep stimulating my mind, my imagination. I also realized that I'm very good at conceptualizing. I'm very good at imagining. I'm very good at putting things together. Hence, I'm on this side of the table. I'm not on the side of the entrepreneur's table, where I have to relentlessly execute every day. But I help them think through. I help them figure out what works and how to put it all together. So you need to figure out for yourself what your strengths are. So while you're here at IIM, what are the things that you would do as students? Interact with as many people as you can, preferably all those who are orthogonally apart from you. Very, very different. Don't hang out with people who are from the same hostel, the same college, the same town, etc. Try and meet new kinds of people. Understand their motivations. Learn to live with differences without being disagreeable. Okay? Very, very important. Learn to disagree, but understand why you're disagreeing. Not because of the person, but because of the idea and the concept. Participate in as many things as possible, whether it's sports, it's music, it's theater, whatever. All of these help you understand how people operate. The competitiveness comes, the collaboration comes. How do you make all of this come together and work? And learn to contribute, not just outsource. Don't find that one teammate who's pretty awesome at writing reports and outsource your report writing to that person, right? Which will happen. So don't look so serious, because you will all end up doing that. But once in a while, contribute and learn to shoulder that load, because it's very crucial that you learn to do that. Just walk around the city. Step outside IIM, right? And just see what happens. Because that is the context in which your future is going to be. It's not going to be isolated. It's not going to be a neatly encapsulated silo. You have to learn to deal with all of these things. And you will learn the very important thing in Kannada, Swalpa adjust madi. Because that's what life is all about. You cannot be rigid. You cannot be entirely insular. For my part, I took up courses in Japanese management and organizational behavior. Found them extremely fulfilling. Unfortunately, both the profs from whom I learned are no more. But those were non-standard courses. People were wondering, what on earth are you doing? Right? But that's the kind of thing that I'd encourage you all to pursue. If everybody follows the same road, you'll all end up at the same place. Question you have to ask is, do I want to end up at the same place? What is it that you want to make of your lives? Is it a script that you have written, or you want to follow somebody else's script and end up exactly in the same place as they have? The second thing, so the first was about people, right? So the second is, you're going to live in this century, which is the knowledge economy. Read like crazy. And I cannot emphasize that enough. There is so much of information, there is so much of knowledge, there is so much of change that is happening, that if you don't read and you aren't aware of what is happening around you, you'll become a dinosaur sooner than you realize. Eric Schmidt, who till recently was the CEO of Google, estimated that all the information created since the dawn of civilization till 2003 is the amount of information being generated now every 2 days. 5 exabytes of information. And he said this in 2010. 3.5 billion searches occur every day on Google. What are you doing about it? Are you searching? Or are you trying to figure out, which is the latest interesting tweet? So remember that being able to put all of this together is what boggles the mind. And hence, synthesis is crucial. Go out, find interesting people. Do interesting things. The other day I was at an event, other day meaning 2 days back, where there was a fairly erudite, eminent person talking about the intersection of astrophysics and music. Look out for it. You have technology today, you have your mobile phones, there are very, very interesting events occurring, interesting things happening around you, interesting stuff is happening in the, interesting stuff happening in the world around you. Read about them, understand them, figure out what does it mean for me. What's going to happen at the intersection of, let's say, design and business? Because the world of tomorrow is not going to be the same as the world of yesterday. It's going to be dramatically, dramatically different. So you have to be able to learn how to make sense of that world. And if you cannot operate at these points of intersection, you cannot understand what massive changes are taking place, you're going to have a really, really tough time. But the ability to synthesize, abstract these learnings is very, very crucial. And therefore see broad trends, patterns, etc., that help you figure out where the ball is going to be, not where the ball has been. Right? Be curious. All of mankind has made progress only because of that one thing, the desire to learn and curiosity. What lies on the other side of that hill? What lies below the ocean? What is out there in the skies? What is illness? How do I cure it? How do I go faster? Etc. Right? Keep that sense of curiosity, that imagination, that desire alive. Don't just come here and just keep doing the same thing, worried about your grades and marks. All that will happen. I'm talking of stuff that is beyond that, which is what will make you who you are, right? And not what somebody else has been. So figure out new ways of doing things here while you're here. Join a club. Start a new club. What club would you like to start? Ask yourself that. Why should I join an existing club? Correct? Seek out new interesting people. Invite them over. Talk to alumni. There's so many things you can do. The question is, do you have that urge, that desire, that curiosity to learn and to make a change in yourself first? Third, whether we like it or not, technology is all around us. You cannot be a technophobe. Embrace technology. It's a great, great friend. Technology is going to transform pretty much everything that we are familiar with in the coming decades. You cannot extrapolate the past because the rate of change and the kinds of change that are occurring are so dramatic and so transformational, you'll find it impossible to figure out what is happening unless you're immersed in it. Take financial services. In the next 10 years, you're going to see a dramatic change in financial services in India. Banks are scared, not just in India, but around the world, right? Once I have a mobile phone, I have digital identity, I have security, and I'm able to pay digitally, why do I need a bank, right? Think about manufacturing. If I have robots and 3D printing, do I need massive plants with workers? What about retail? What about healthcare? Artificial intelligence in healthcare? What about synthetic materials? What about prosthetics? So each and every domain, each and every endeavor of human life is going to be impacted by technology. And you, whether you're in investment banking or consulting or an entrepreneur or in industry, if you don't understand these things, You don't need not be a PhD in it, but you must understand, appreciate what is happening. If you don't know these things, pretty soon the world will pass you by. And the 21st century, the knowledge economy will be unfortunately not a knowledge economy for you, which means, you will be left far behind, which is a very unhappy situation to be in. Look at the kinds of internships you want to take. The same old glamorous, quote unquote, sexy kinds of internships, summer jobs, and jobs will all be passé. There'll be a new class of jobs emerging for which we don't even know today what form and shape they will take. Question, are you preparing yourself for it? How are you preparing yourself for it? So keep asking these questions. What will the world be like? What would you want your resume to look like? What are the kinds of skills and capabilities? Can you imagine something in 2020? What will the world be? Right? You only make a difference if you're at the cusp of a change in an industry and you ride it. Not in being in an existing industry, because a lot of existing businesses, industries, etc., are essentially going to get deconstructed. So the question is then, who's going to play a big role as the deconstruction occurs? Fourth, we talked to people, talked about reading widely, knowing widely, talked about technology. Fourth, and I again cannot emphasize this enough, never ever underestimate the power of communication. And that's one of the biggest areas of improvement for all of us in the room and in India. How do you conceptualize, how do you present, how do you articulate an idea that can be very, very complex, very, very profound? How do I say it in a simple way such that everybody else understands? So the power of communication is important. Communication is not speaking and writing. That is one way. Communication is when the other person understands what I'm saying. So what is that? How do you develop it? Is the important thing. And therefore, whatever courses you might have here in communication, right, take it seriously. Listen to great speakers. Practice. Don't be ashamed. Nobody became a great speaker by miracle. They all worked very, very hard, right? And to appear to be impromptu, you have to practice a lot. Okay? And in all the great speakers, the great politicians, everybody of all time would actually have speeches where they would actually, in the written down piece, would say, pause for applause, crack joke here. Do you understand? Very, very important. And the power of communication, please mark my words, is crucial. Because if you cannot get your idea across in this competitive world, you've lost it. Nobody cares. Because there are 50 other competing ideas in that nanosecond. Right? I'm not talking about being a snake oil salesman or a used car dealer type of communicator. How do I take a profound thought and communicate it? So one of the things you will realize is and as a person who's been working with entrepreneurs for close to 20 plus years now, one of the questions is, okay, you've got a wonderful idea, a great business plan, et cetera, et cetera. Can you explain your business to your grandmother? How would you do it? So the moment somebody starts taking recourse to complex language, to buzzwords, to technicalities, you realize the person has not really understood it. The more you understand, the easier it is for you to explain. So it's very, very hard to be simple. Right? So understand that thing. And it's very, very crucial that you internalize this. So what would you do? So think about it. You watch the speakers at TED, right? Have you decided to ever be a speaker? What would it take for you to speak for 18 minutes on a topic? Have you practiced? TED operates on a very simple formula. You get 18 minutes. It's a gimmicky thing, but it works. So how would you do it? Have you written a blog post ever, communicating an idea? Have you had an argument with somebody? So practice these things. This is what life is about, because you have an idea. You have a way to do something. You're sitting in office. You're telling your boss, I think we need to do this. He'll say, okay, what do we do? How will you communicate it? You understand? So these are very, very crucial things that I think, you need to invest in. And if you think about it, I think the greatest example that we saw of the power of communication was in the 2014 Lok Sabha elections. The power of communication was right there in front of us, right? See the impact. You can move millions of people if you use the right metaphors. You have the right passion. You have the motivation, right? And that is what, as a leader, you have to be able to do. No great leader was a silent person. He was a great communicator. So if you have in your aspiration to be a great leader and to take advantage of your leadership skills, you better learn how to communicate. As an investor, I would never invest in a company where the CEO cannot sell. Again, I don't mean sell again in a derogatory manner, because I have to communicate to the market, I have to communicate to investors, I have to communicate to employees, I have to communicate to my shareholders, my vendors, my suppliers, etc., etc. How do I hire somebody? Why should somebody join my company? I have to be able to communicate the vision of my company, what I stand for, why should they join me, etc. Because I don't have any resources, right? I'm a small company. I cannot afford to pay the big salaries that the big companies can. So I need to be able to know that. Join a Toastmasters club. If not, start one. So there are n number of things you can do. You need to have that inclination within you to be able to do it. Fifth, I was very glad to hear about the need to develop an entrepreneurial mindset. The last 20 years I've been passionately advocating, arguing, fighting, communicating, for the need to have that. Not just on campuses, but inside each one of us, in society, in politics, and as a country. You don't need to be an entrepreneur, but you need to be somebody with an entrepreneurial mindset. What is the entrepreneurial mindset? Can you question a status quo? Is this the best? Isn't there a better, faster, cheaper way of doing something? How do you do it? Why not? Why? Ask questions. Okay? Very, very crucial. And again, remember, you're sitting here in Bangalore, which is India's knowledge entrepreneurship capital. You are here at IIMB. You are 1% of 1% of 1%. And you want to be one more entrant into a job market? Is that your aspiration? 100 million jobs are required to be created in this country in the next 10 years. What are you going to do about it? These are the questions that you should be thinking about. These are the things that should be firing you up. I'm not saying, you step out and you start a company immediately, but be consumed by that idea of what can I do to make a change. Even if you take up a job, the question you have to ask is, how can I make a difference? I don't mean this in a sense of charity, but how do you do stuff better, faster, cheaper? How do you dramatically impact work itself? So these are the kinds of things that you have to worry about. And don't be afraid of risk. You have already de-risked yourself by being here, right? You have the educational background. You've already de-risked yourself. Can you take risk is the question. So the entrepreneurial mindset is one that helps you take that risk. Managing risk is what the Babu will do. You understand? So I'm very, very clear in my head when I say this, that we need people to ask those questions. Why is the road dirty? Why can't it be done in a different way? It all starts from asking those questions. And then you have to be able to communicate. Get people around you. Go out and make change happen. Now you start realizing, I now need to be able to communicate. I need to give people a reason to be part of my initiative. I now need to be able to put people together. I have to use some technology. I have to figure out a way to make some change happen and clean the road. Correct? It's nothing but synthesis. So learn to do that. Don't be afraid of experimenting, right? Like FDR said, the greatest thing to fear is fear itself. And you have nothing to fear about. And like I said, because you have de-risked everything by coming here. IIM Bangalore has got NSR cell. You know what that is, right? NS Raghavan Center for Entrepreneurial Learning, on the preeminent academic incubators that exist on campus here. Go there, find out what companies exist. How can you contribute? Meet the entrepreneurs there. Understand what are their motivations. They have no resources. They're not the McKinseys and the Goldman Sachs of the world, but they want to become the next McKinsey, Goldman Sachs, and Googles of the world. What is that spirit? How do you help them? Whether it's technology, whether it's marketing, whether it's social media, whether it's operations, whatever. That is what the spirit is all about. Not by wearing, one more tie, sitting in there, a bunch of another 1,000 people sitting in the same office and writing the same kind of reports for the next 10 years. Okay? Ask yourself, what am I doing different? How can I be different? Take up internships. Talk to alumni. Network. Understand. What does it mean to be in a startup? What does it mean when you don't have money? You're supposed to pay salaries, right? What does it mean? Can you handle a situation like that? That is the test of who you are. And entrepreneurship, in my mind, is the single greatest journey into yourself. It really tests who you are. It forces you to go deep down. It helps you manage people. How do you attract people to join you when there's nothing around you? You can't promise them any salaries because you've got no money to pay. So what do? Goes back to that old question, right? When Steve Jobs asked John Scully to join from Pepsi. John Scully used to be the president of Pepsi. Steve Jobs hired him. He said, what do you want to do? Do you want to change the world or spend the rest of your life selling sugared water? 26 years old, John Scully 41. You see what I mean? That's the attitude. That's the spirit. Don't lose that. The day you lose it, you're done. Then you become a spreadsheet. And sixth, and I think this is the last thing I'm going to talk about. Learn to find meaning beyond yourself. What is that inspirational thing you have done? Who has inspired you? Who have you inspired? You'll get the grades, you'll get the job, all the speeches will be done, you'll have the same resume, your GPA will be outstanding, you'll go for the same interviews, you'll say the same thing, you'll pretend to like the same jobs, right? All that is the ritual that we all go through at every placement season, which is fine, it needs to be done, I get that. Beyond that, what is it that you want to do? Can you rise above yourself to find meaning and to deliver meaning? And this is, to me, a very, very important thing. In 1990, a batchmate of mine, Vaidhi, had an unfortunate accident and was paralyzed from waist down. And it was a shock entirely out of the blue. Nobody expected it, least of all him. Not once was there a situation where he felt sorry for himself. Was cheerful, gritty, determined, fought back, and then with the help of his mentor, Dr. Bhattacharya, set up something called the Ganga Trust, which over the past very many years has helped lots and lots of people with spinal cord injury. It's been an advocacy platform, it's helped raise money, it's done counseling, it's provided equipment, and a bunch of other things. That is hard work, not what we're sitting here and studying at night and struggling to get a job. How do I get meaning beyond myself? Why should I do it for somebody else? I have enough and more troubles on my plate as it is. Right? So I'm absolutely delighted when Vaidi, Dr. Bhattacharya, and this institute, enlightened administration of this institute, allowed Vaidi to come back because he had to take a break because of the unfortunate accident and complete his MBA. Now just see what all has happened for that particular event to have occurred. You need a passionate, determined, gritty, inspirational person. You need a bunch of people who are excited by it. You need the right mentoring. You need the communication. You need people to all come together and then make it happen. Nothing but synthesis. And today I'm absolutely, really, really happy to see Vaidi here. Special welcome to him. And thanks to the efforts of someone like Vaidi and Ganga Trust and a bunch of other people, IIMB has again, received another student, Jaskiran, who also has who also has a serious injury. But imagine what it takes to go through all of it and be here. So special welcome to Jaskaran as well. So the question you have to ask, being privileged, who did you inspire? Right? Those are the kinds of questions I'm urging you all to think of. And not just, you'll get your job, you'll get your salary, you'll buy your new house and car and vacation and all over the place and all the other nice cool stuff. Don't let go of that. What else are you doing that is beyond yourself? That's the question I'm urging you all to think. Don't get lost in the algorithm, the spreadsheet, and the model. Life is way beyond that. Learn to imagine. Learn to do things that arise the passion, the human inside you, and make a change. So in the 2 years that you're going to be here, find something that's inspirational, that makes you rise beyond and above yourself and make a difference. I hope all this has not been too scary. And I thought I would just say all this just to challenge you. So let me just end very quickly with this quote from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. You are what your deep driving desire is. As is your desire, so is your will. As is your will, so is your action. As is your action, so is your destiny. So it's all in you. So if you arise and feel that power inside and don't take constraints but think of possibilities, life will be very different. Or to put it in more colloquial terms, jab man mein hai vishwas, baki sab bakwas. So welcome to IIMB. Here's wishing you all an awesome, terrific 2 years. Thank you all very much.